Shapeshifter this evening, Wayne Kaminsky, who is not only in his own right a shapeshifter, but he helps people shift their shape as well. He is the chief executive and founder at FitChef. And there's a saying, there are lots of sayings when it comes to food. You are what you eat. And I suppose nowadays you are what you eat and drink. That is the reality of modern day eating. Wayne Kaminsky is with us. You are an exercise addict. I mean, you're chiseled, you're built like you do 12 hours of exercise a day.
There have been phases of that. There have been many, many phases of lots of exercise. But I love my exercise. I love being active. I love getting out there. And I love food. So it's a really, really awesome mix. And I think sort of your natural journey, if you are going to be big into exercise, is you are going to sort of ask the question, what do I eat?
And for so many of us, we think that we can plow pies into our faces and then go for a bike ride twice a week and it'll burn itself off because now we're exercising. Yeah. We're getting our cardio up and we've been out for a whole 15 minutes. Why is the weight not falling off?
And you just can't do that. Exactly.
Because it's what you're putting in that you're not getting rid of.
There's the whole sort of fallacy that it's just calories in versus calories out. And I proved that wrong. I mean, like when you sort of out there doing things like the Cape Epic or Ironman and you're burning like 10,000 calories a day or more and you're doing massive exercise sessions, the issue is you actually sort of don't burn off that sort of extra fat if you eat badly. And you find many, many people doing comrades and all kinds of big sports events are actually massively overweight and very unhealthy. And it doesn't help, you've got to get good food. I used to be one of those guys who, was training for triathlon, doing the Cape Epic and popping into a sort of a garage on the way to a meeting thinking, I haven't eaten, and standing by the pie counter and thinking, which is the healthiest pie? And you go through.
Because I'll have spinach and feta because that's got to be healthier than the steak and kidney.
Well, I went sausage roll. I thought, sausage roll. Okay, if I peel off half of the outside and eat the inside, that must be at least solid protein, but it's not.
But those are the tricks we play. That we choose to allow ourselves to be deceived by by what we want to have in that particular moment.
Totally. And food is all about that. We're just making these emotional choices about food and about nutrition. And often they're very, very wrong.
The psychology of food is big and important, especially when you go into the food industry. You've got to understand what motivates people with food. And nobody who's never been on a diet can understand how food can talk to you. Yeah. And food can call your name. Food knows your name. Bacon
knows your name.
Bacon knows my name.
Yeah.
Calls me from the fridge.
And without a doubt. I mean, food really is a massive part of our lives. If you think about it, every single social event you have really is around food. If it wasn't for food, I mean, you'd sit there staring at each other and there'd be no real conversation. Food causes conversation. It causes emotions to flow. It causes sort of good times to happen as well. So we've got a really emotional sort of strong link to food.
Well, how do we celebrate? Oh, we go out for a nice meal. We don't go out for a nice walk up the mountain or for a swim in the sea or for a swim in Emmarentia Dam.
Certainly not in Joburg.
No, but nobody's going to celebrate with a good family outing up a mountain because Johnny did well in his report. No. You go and spoil yourself with custard.
Let's get out there and eat it and spoil yourself with some kind of sort of sugary, carby sort of food. Get high. Yeah. It is a high. Basically,
we reward ourselves with food, and it starts very, very early on. Take me back to before food, and you were in social media and technology, that sort of space. I mean, was that your profession up until you had this food epiphany?
Correct. Sort of. I started off originally in graphic design, and I thought graphic design advertising, and I thought, well, let me just go down this route. I'm sure it'll go somewhere. There's a sort of a end point in mind. I always knew I'd have my own brand. So I started off in graphic design advertising, and then I got bored quite quickly and decided to move on onto web. I got involved in sort of web and social media. I got tired of sort of dealing with programmers who couldn't do what I needed. So I started programming as well. And just over the years, I got more involved in web, social media, online stuff, offline stuff, developing software and all kinds of things. And that just led me to the sort of point where one day I knew I'd have my own brand and I could go in and create like something like FitChef.
Okay, so the FitChef moment happened when you faced a problem, and that was that you were burning the calories, but you weren't burning the fat. You couldn't figure out in your own mind why it was that you were eating healthily, as you put it earlier, and often what we think is healthy isn't actually that healthy.
It isn't actually.
And so you then set about creating a business to solve the problem.
Yeah. I mean, literally, I think sort of most businesses or good businesses come from that whole thing where you decide, let's solve my issues. And if you can solve your own issues, the light comes on and you think, hang on a second, I can solve this for others too. And with me, the whole thing was like, I think 2009, 2010. I was working way too hard, doing all kinds of things. And in 2009, 2010, over the 2 years, I was on 14 courses of antibiotics. I mean, here I am doing sort of Ironman, doing massive training sessions. I'd done sort of 320-kilometer one-day cycles, done a lot of sort of extreme stuff there. And I found I was just living sick all the time, living on antibiotics all the time, still overweight. And actually, I think the sort of light came on one day. It was 3 weeks before the main Ironman, the full Ironman. And a friend of mine saw me on the beach and said to me, Wayne, if only you could lose like 5 kilograms, you'd look great. And it's not a lot, but you think like, here I'm burning, I'm exercising sort of like 10-hour exercise sessions, 12-hour exercise sessions, cycling, 250 kilometers.
Before breakfast, just to warm up.
Before breakfast, exactly. That's it. And, he said to me, like, Wayne, if only you could lose, 5 kilograms, you'd look great. And I thought, this is mad. I've just done a 180K cycle. I'm doing a 30K run this afternoon, and I've done an hour and a half swim this morning. This is mad. And I'm eating fairly well. I'd seen someone who said to me, this is how you eat, calories in versus calories out. I was watching my food, and yet I was getting no results. And super sick, mentally sort of not focused. And I realized, yeah.
So what was the moment? I mean, how did the process, that transition go from being Mr. Dependent on antibiotics and Mr. Social Media to getting into a chefy business?
Well, the first thing that happened to me was I thought, okay, let me just head out to a sort of pharmacy and buy everything that says immune booster. And I literally came out with a trolley with about 2,500 rand worth of things that said immune booster.
Did they work?
No. And I tried a lot of things. I mean, I really sort of like pushed the limit, tested them out, all kinds of things. Then along came MasterChef. And MasterChef, I decided, you know what? I feel like entering MasterChef. I've always loved food.
Had you ever cooked with aggression before?
I had originally when I was a kid, and like my whole plan originally was to go into, sort of into food, be a chef, but I'm incredibly fussy. So in our family, we are probably the most incredibly fussy people you've come across. We just don't eat all kinds of things. Tactile, defensive, this flavor, that flavor, and it's just really sort of like, no ways, I can't eat this food. We are super fussy. And so sort of when MasterChef came along, and I thought, let me enter this. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll enter, and I'm just going to eat whatever I need to eat, just to sort of like, learn the lessons. And there's about a sort of 9-month build-up, and I just did loads and loads of obsessive cooking. I was really loving it. And as I was cooking, like in one evening, I'd cook like 45 versions of one meal. On a weekend, I'd do 70 meals sometimes, and my fridge and freezer were just overflowing with loads of sort of fresh and frozen food. And for the first time ever, I could just walk into the kitchen, grab something out of the fridge or freezer, warm it up, and eat it. And I'd made it. I knew exactly what was in the food. I knew it was all the vegetables I'd peeled and chosen. I knew it was the sort of food I'd ask questions about, like saying, well, why do I need to add sugar? Surely I can add apple. Surely I can do this. And there was all these questions along. And all of a sudden, as I ate my own food, within 3 weeks of that there, I dumped the extra like 5 kgs, and I was off antibiotics. And I thought, you know what? Food is more than just food.
But food has become a convenience thing. I remember a classic Kevin Hedderwick line as to why they were growing the famous brands business so rapidly is because people are time scarce and cash rich.
Totally.
And so on the way home, I need something pizza. And pizza is the solution to many, many problems in the world except health.
Yeah, it is, without a doubt. And I think sort of convenience, I think why FitChef's done so well is because we sort of hit the convenience market really, really well. If we stock your whole freezer, if we put 54 meals, 60 meals and like 50 smoothies into your freezer in one go, all of a sudden your freezer turns into the most convenient food machine you've ever seen. And convenience drives us actually more than social, actually, even. So we eat for convenience because we run around, we do all kinds of things, we push ourselves hard, work, life, home, social life, and then decide, now it's time for food. you've got to think of food first, but we haven't got the time and we don't like cooking. And
but the thing is also, if you plan your menus and you start becoming a bit more predictable in your menus, and you go back to old-fashioned values of Monday it's this and Friday it's fish, whatever it might be,
Totally.
and create a structure around your food, you've got to then be able to plan better, and the planning almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Structure is critical, and I think sort of most people sort of realize, well, as you get more and more into food, that structure and that planning is the only thing that'll make a difference. Because unfortunately, good food doesn't just happen. You know, it takes cooking, it takes time, it takes preparation.
Well, it takes the planning to buy the stuff, to have it in stock, so that when you do the cooking, you're not going, I forgot the beans.
That's it.
And then by the time you come back from the shops with the beans, you've lost your mojo, and
Totally.
you
And
left
then-
the pot on and it burnt anyway.
And then it's sort of like pizza, as you say.
I want to talk about how the business started, where the capital came from, and all of that in just a moment. My guest is Wayne Kaminsky, Chief Executive and founder at FitChef. How did you do in MasterChef that year?
Actually, terribly. Because so I entered on the night beforehand. You had to sort of like cook and get ready. Everyone was presenting sort of like puddings and those kind of things, because you had to serve the meal at like between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius. I decided to go in with a real complex meal, unfortunately. So I went in and actually overnight I prepared it, got ready to go, and I found out my meal had frozen. And I had a lot of sort of fresh stuff in there as well, and it didn't work well. So what I did was I recooked the meal, got there a little bit late, and there were 2,500 people standing in the queue.
Oh,
It was about 37 degrees Celsius that day. It was super, super hot, standing in a massively long queue. By the time I got to the front and I opened up my cooler chest, it had collapsed, fallen over, something had fallen onto it. So I squished it together. I squished the whole meal together with my hands and thought, well, actually, first I left and thought, no, this is ridiculous. I'm going in. I've come all this way. I'm going to see it through, even though it's like never going to work. Squished it together, walked through, presented to the chef, and he looked at me, and I thought, you're looking at me funny, but you don't know how much I've squished there with my hands. He ate that. I left, and I never went back.
okay. But it changed. The point is, you engaged in a process that did change your life.
Correct.
Guest this evening, Wayne Kaminsky, Chief Executive and founder of FitChef. Are you a FitChef customer? What is it like? Give me a shout. Just use such an interesting term. Our food is incredibly clean. You don't mean clean as in you scrub your potatoes really well, which I'm sure you do.
Sure we do, yes.
But the recipes, it's a purist approach to the preparation.
It's a purist, old-fashioned approach. So my thing is that, I'm always saying that no one is as obsessed about whole food as we are. Like, we only use whole food. I will not.
What is whole food in the South African context?
So whole food is basically sort of it's your vegetables, it's your vegetables, your fruit, your whole vegetables, your whole fruit. It's your good proper herbs. It's proper quality salt. So like we use inland Kalahari salt, not this junk table salt. We use proper oils, things that are unprocessed, no chemicals, no man-made chemicals, no preservatives, no additives, no colorants, no flavorants. We use food as it actually is. If I want to sweeten something, we put in apples. If I want to color something, we put in more tomato or more beetroot. It is completely sort of 100% what you'd consider sort of, whole food from the farm.
Whole food, but not organic, because the organic thing is quite complicated and becomes very expensive, and it's not always what it claims to be.
Unbelievable. And actually, that's a key point. So organic is very good with the pesticide-free. But pesticide-free, sort of in this country at the moment is very hard to get hold of. So, we're all going to move towards the sort of pesticide-free concept, but it will take a long while to get there.
How many people are you employing?
We've got 70 people now. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And I was going through your website earlier today, and there's a level of complexity I hadn't anticipated in terms of the variety and the versions and the kits and the packages and the options. That's logistically must be a nightmare to manage.
We've run a massive business where, logistics, we do our own deliveries. So it's deliveries, our own marketing teams, video teams. We've got our own development teams because we're an online company, social media teams, customer service teams.
But that's your background coming in. Thank you very much, which is helping build the business.
And then retail. So one of our new things is retail. So we've gone massive out in retail. A lot of Dis-Chems, Cecil's, Spars, a lot of other shops as well. So there's there's so many areas we've got to be good at.
Yeah.
It's a complex business.
It is complex, and you are dealing in fresh, and fresh to frozen.
Yes.
But it's stuff doesn't last. You've got to process really quickly, you've got to be operating a machine. Do you do all of that sort of production yourself?
We do. We work with some partners, but we handle everything internally, so we own as much as possible of that actual process. Yes.
And how do you measure how much you're doing? Is it in terms of customer accounts? Is it in terms of meals delivered? How does it work?
It's meals delivered, and also sort of how many are now signing up for recurring orders. So how many customers love us enough to sign up for a recurring order and have an order that is delivered every single month? I think that's a big positive. You know, if people are signing up, we've got some people who've been with us for 4 years now.
But that's how banks measure it. I mean, they say if your primary bank account is with us, you are our customer. You're getting your salary paid and you're paying your debit orders out of our account. That's the kind of customer you're wanting to be committed to.
Totally.
How flexible are you in terms of when people go on holiday and suspend accounts and all of that sort of stuff?
Happens all the time. So sort of, with our sort of clientele, I mean, they generally tend to travel a lot. They're
They're wealthy.
They're wealthy, without a doubt, and they're sort of too busy. They need good food. They need performance food. They need real food. They appreciate real. So we just pause. We pause recurring orders very, very often.
Okay. In terms of what a family of four, a well-heeled family of four is going to spend on a monthly basis if they order their dinners from you, for example, and maybe kids' snack packs or kids' lunch boxes, because I see there's an option on that particular front. What's it going to cost?
It's going to cost you sort of in the region of for about four of you, probably about 4,000 Rand, I'd say. 3,000 to 4,000, depending on what you want to go for. If you want to go for a lot of extra options, it can go up. Mm-hmm. It depends on sort of how many of the meals you want. As you say, sort of if it's just dinners, that's going to be sort of, probably sort of 3,000-4,000 Rand. If you go up from there and you're wanting all your meals, 100% of your meals, that's great. But it is going to cost a bit more.
Explain the delivery process.
So the delivery process, basically, in general, you'd place your order online. You'd go through and select either a 21-day challenge or your own selection.
Do you have set menus? So you say, I couldn't be bothered. I mean, one of the things that puts people off buying the groceries online is you've got to click on Stay Soft.
Lots of stuff.
Lavender, lemon, guava, whatever flavor Stay Soft comes in. And it's an incredibly boring, clicky process. You promise to make it fun and say, look, we'll challenge you. You've got any allergies? And then deliver.
That's it. So look, I mean, people do love, sort of, just simplicity. And I think when you've got tons of choices, I mean, like, you go to the movies and like you all know what popcorn and sort of your soft drinkers and your sweet of choice, but you're going to go along and select combo number 1 or 2. And I've always said that's the way, why we've done actually 21-day challenges or challenge kits. So you come along and just say, first time, I want these, give me that quickly. That's a quick decision. And then you taste all the food. What we find is with recurring customers and other customers, they say, I like that, I love that. I'll do with those. I'll have smoothies. I'll have these snacks. And there's lots of flexibility then. But initially we prefer that they actually do come on and just say, just buy a 21-day kit.
And why do you call it your 21-day challenge? What is the challenge aspect of it? Is this bringing your OCD exercise nature to the fore?
Basically it. It's sort of kind of, can you challenge yourself to eat clean for 21 days? So look here, I mean, most people do live on a very high carb, high sugar, junk food diet, really. I mean, that's sort of most people, really. So what happens is you come along and you want to eat good quality food. So first of all, there's a bit of a change in your palate. Now, I always compare this to, first time you had good whiskey and wine, it was like, that stuff is disgusting. Like, how do people drink whiskey and wine? And over time, you got used to the proper flavors and you appreciate sort of what good quality drinks were like. And it's the same with food. If you're so used to having just sugary, sweet junk, when you get to real food, like sometimes it's a bit like, oh, it's a bit lumpy, or it's the wrong color, or it was brighter last time, it was more green this time, or whatever it may be. And actually there's variation, and you've got to get used to these things. But I tell you what, it is a journey worth going on.
Okay. Now, the delivery mechanism, place an order online. Does it get delivered in a cold box within 2 hours of order and packed into the freezer for you? How does the process work?
We usually got like a sort of a 2 to 8 working day sort of delay, depending on sort of what actually is going on.
So you cooking to order?
No, we actually we've got loads of trucks out there delivering all the time. But basically, sort of most people sort of go online, the payments clear. They decide sort of, I want it on this day or that day. I've got a domestic at home, or I've got a helper, or come to my office and deliver at the office. And just basically, it's a case of just planning, pack the thing, confirm it's been packed, double checked by sort of internal staff, and then just shipped off. And we ship everything in frozen trucks. So we're a frozen food business. All our trucks go out at minus 18 degrees, and they're delivering in big sort of like frozen boxes, proper cardboard double layer boxes. Gets delivered to your office, and that'll easily sort of stay frozen for 16, 18 hours.
Okay,
no problem at all.
How difficult was it setting up this business?
Incredibly hard. I mean,
was there a point where you went, whose dumb idea was this?
Oh, many times. We've lain on the ground and thought, this is ridiculous. How could it be so hard, actually? And I think that's the normal thing. So, I mean, first of all, we started off and, I sort of started making the food myself, obviously. And, you can't get very far like that because you're out doing marketing and seeing people, trying to sort of organize things.
And you chopping carrots.
Chopping carrots. Yeah. It doesn't work. So actually, I had someone else come in and actually do that for me. Now, we would sort of launch a campaign online on Facebook, and next thing we'd sell out of all of our food. So one point we thought, okay, let's go big. We're going to cook for 3 weeks. We're going to sort of advertise for 2 days, and then we're going to actually turn it off, and we're just going to sort of like deliver everything. In those 2 days, I had to turn the advertising campaigns off at a day and a half. And we'd sold out of all the food we had made for the last 3 weeks and the food we could make for the next 3 weeks. And we decided, this is crazy. We can't do it. We've got to go far bigger.
And you have to scale.
You have to scale.
Where did the money come from?
And so basically, look, myself really, it was a case of just find it wherever you possibly could. And I think that's the way to go. It was a case of just like, think smart, think smart, think smart. Try and find partners, try and find deals, try and find something actually. And it got to a point where we just tried so hard and we were just thinking like, well, how do we get to the next step? Because we just could not scale big enough. And literally, we had a little bit of a meeting down in Cape Town. So we were up in Joburg in Cape Town, and we're down in Cape Town, and we were all we had these sort of presentations down in Cape Town. And while we're sort of sitting around chatting between things, I kept on saying to my partners, guys, because I brought in some partners there, and I had a partner, and I brought in my 2 brothers into the business. I said, guys, we have got to scale this business. Like, what do we do? And we thought about all kinds of things. I said, come, we've got to think out of the box, out of the box, out of the box. How do we do this? And we are actually at Spear Wine Farm, and I got a couple of bottles of this creative block number 5 and number 3. It's awesome.
Are those the most creative blocks?
That removed all creative blocks. What we found was we sat there, and literally that month, it was basically sort of like, that was in September, and we had sold like 60,000 Rand worth of food. And we were like, how can we hit the next phase? And we literally sort of, after many sort of bottles of creative block, we just said, next month, let's sell R1 million. And we were like, yes, that's a great idea. So I got back on a plane the next day. We had a launch party in the morning, sort of at some CrossFit box. Got on a plane, got back to Joburg, and on the plane we worked out what do we need for R1 million worth of food. Got hold of my kitchens as I arrived in Lanseria, and I said, guys, you've got to see this email. I need a response immediately on Monday morning. They looked at it and they said, this is impossible. We cannot scale that fast. I said, could you try? And they said, they'll give it a bash. Anyway, so they sort of cooked food for about a week, delivered our first couple of batches up. I'd never seen so much food arrive. We hit the button, and we did just under R1 million that month.
And setting big targets has worked.
Setting big targets worked, and just taking a massive risk and just going for it. Sometimes you just got to sort of like say, this is it, go.
How much are you doing a month now?
Well over that,
multiples of
that, yes, yeah.
Multiples of multiples, so tens of multiples.
It's getting there.
And it's been going for 4 years?
Okay, 5 years now, almost 5 years.
Is it possible to grow a consumer business in a broken economy? Wayne Kaminsky's experience suggests that it can. Give people what they want, give it to them when they want it, how they want it, deliver it to them and tell them that they're getting a great deal and they're going to be better off for it. And you've got yourself a business. That's what Wayne Kaminsky has done, chief executive and founder at FitChef. FitChef.